Well, this is probably the third podcast in this series that you've been waiting for. This is Kevin Johnson of Leverage Consulting, and that's right, it's the Resilient Entrepreneur Podcast. So in the first podcast in this series, I've talked about building a team and making sure that you actually have some type of vision and direction. In the last one, I talked about, are you too comfortable? And are we too comfortable in really the size and scope of our own vision and direction? And this one is actually the one that sparked all three of these podcasts. And it was all because of, I have certain little things that I like to talk about at times. And this one sparked just too much that I could get into one podcast. And it came from a slide in a PowerPoint presentation. It's a slide that I typically build into a lot of presentations. And I use it as a social media post periodically. So and as I'm doing this, I'm reading it from my Instagram post that went out. And it is, your practice culture is shaped by the worst behavior tolerated. And I'll read that again. Your practice or business culture is shaped by the worst behavior tolerated. So imagine really great sports teams or some, and again, I go back to like this Tim Grover podcast or interview that I had listened to not long ago. And the interviewer asked Tim Grover somewhat assumptively, so I guess Michael Jordan and Kobe were the two greatest players you've ever coached. And immediately Tim Grover said, no, actually not. He said, I coached people who were more athletic than those two, and I've coached people who have more God-given talent than those two, but they were the two most successful players that I had. And I mean, it speaks volumes. I mean, I've talked to other people about this, and it's interesting how eye-opening it was for me, but also for other people that I've talked to about this. And it really gets to how well we apply ourselves. When you think back to the day-to-day, and again, this could be another podcast, talking about daily micro decisions. And as a leader, a manager, and those of you who think, well, I'm not in that position, everyone in a practice, everyone in a business has the potential and possibility of being a leader. And if you'd like to prove me wrong, love to debate you at some point, but I'm pretty pig-headed on this. Everyone has the opportunity to be a leader and or manager. Even if you don't have the title, you can act the part. So when you think about small daily micro decisions, and I'll provide a couple of examples here where, and these are ones that might make some of you, kind of laugh, might make you a little embarrassed, might make you think to scenarios you've observed yourself. But there was one client that had a team member who'd been there for more than 20 years, and she had some stuff going on in her own life, but she just decided at times she wouldn't show up. They were supposed to be there at 7:30 every morning. Sometimes she'd show up at 9. Sometimes she'd show up at 11. There was a few times she just didn't show up at all and didn't bother to tell anyone. And what do you do with that? I can think of other scenarios, and I've seen this a lot, where what if we're running a really big schedule and someone just conveniently, they need to go to the bathroom. And really what they're doing is they're avoiding working with a patient or a customer. And it really kind of doubles up the work for someone else in your, on your schedule. It could be that you have team members that are always finding the negative in everything. It could be you have team members who are always putting someone else down. So just in those 4 examples, what do you do with that? I mean, do you let it slide, or do you confront it? And confrontation is one of those things that I do believe some people have a God-given talent and have zero issue dealing with it. But then there's a lot of folks out there that they don't even know what to do with confrontation. Confrontation does not need to be a bad thing. But this really gets to, if you want your practice, your business to succeed, if you want your game to be elevated, I mean, think about when Kobe or Michael Jordan walked onto a court, a practice court even, and it doesn't need to be these two. I mean, I can think of examples of Little League teams. I can think of examples of businesses that I've worked with. And when you bring a different player on with a different mindset, it's amazing how it can change the dynamic of the team. And the dynamic of the team shifts, and the success of the practice or business goes up or down. How the leaders and managers deal with those moments of conflict, those little daily micro decisions that I'm talking about. This is what I'm getting at in my post, or my quote with this is, this is what shapes the practice culture. How you deal with those little tiny things here and there are what changes the culture of your business and your practice. If you want people to be accountable, then you need to hold them accountable. You need to give them exactly what it is that they're supposed to do, and you hold them accountable to doing those things. Because it's not just about that person. And those of you who've worked in certain environments, so for example, if you worked as a server in a restaurant, there's so many different examples of this. I worked retail when I was a kid. And you think about, there's so many examples of you can deal with that one person, but there's a lot of other people listening. So when you have a team meeting and someone pipes up with negativity, how do you deal with that? Because if you tolerate it or you let it slide under the rug, you've just not communicated to that one person. You've just given them a little bit more rope, and they're going to go further next time. They're testing the waters a little bit. And if they don't understand that there are guardrails on this highway, and those guardrails are put there by you, not by them. These guardrails are put up because we're headed to a certain destination. And yes, there's some variance, and yes, there's going to be some things along the way. However, if you don't like staying between these guardrails, then maybe this place is not for you. And sometimes that hard conversation may have to come out. However, ultimately, and those of you who've ever worked with me, I'm not a big fan of being hard on people. I'm not a big fan of terminations or just, being the hatchet people or what have you. I'm not a fan of that, because I really do believe every business, every practice, every team member has the capacity and capability to do more, and most, I really do believe, want to do more or better. And sometimes we need a coach. Sometimes we need someone who's going to help us drive it. Sometimes that person is me. Sometimes it's people within your own business or practice. The question is, how often do you tolerate behavior like coming in late, like piping up with negativity in a team meeting? How often do we tolerate that type of behavior? And quite honestly, here's another one that's really tough. Well, it's tough, but it's at the same time, it's not tough at all. And that is, how do you deal with silence? So if you have a team meeting and you ask a question and it's like cricket, 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 how do we draw that out? Because that's kind of confronting the silence too. I mean, we can't tolerate that either. We need participation. We need involvement. We need questions. We need people to demonstrate they understand things. So think about the small daily micro decisions that you make, because when you develop a vision and a direction for your business, this is the greatest investment you will ever have in your lifetime, is your business or your practice. And when you then think about your building a great team to help you get to that destination, this is really one of the most important parts. Because as Tim Grover was saying, Michael Jordan and Kobe were not the two greatest players he'd ever worked with, but they were the most committed and the most consistent in achieving their own goals. And really, that's what you want to do with your own team, is help them stay true to your vision, because ultimately somebody's got to do it. Because otherwise, we're going to be this aimless ship out in the waters, and we'll just run aground at some point, or we'll float off into one of the oceans and we'll never be seen again. And, I don't think anyone wants that. I know no one wants that. So ultimately, we need to be the ones to shape the culture of the practice. And we do that through daily micro decisions and thanking people for the things that they've done right, and helping guide people in the things that they've done that are not going to get us to our vision or our destination. And again, it's not just about that one individual. it's about the rest of the team as well, because they're watching, they're paying attention, and what you do with one is going to also help shape the culture of the entire team or your entire practice. So, fun topic. This is one of those things, if you love change, the last three are really important podcasts, very important information. Might be something you want to share with other people. I've had actually some people I understand are actually playing some of these podcasts for their own teams to spark some conversation. So, with that said, if you have other ideas, topics, things that you'd love for me to cover, let me know. I'd love to hear from you.